Well, it feels like coming home. Here we are again back in San Francisco. That's the Mighty Dash professional version. We're back here exploring the new features of the airplane as well as the newly released Northern California region for prepared version 3, as well as Flightbeam's new scenery, or relatively new scenery. This is their new HD version of KSFO, and a couple little glitches that I noticed, just some flickering textures, but that has more to do actually with the way anti-aliasing works on different screens at different resolutions. So as you zoom in and out, they flicker a little bit, then go away, and that really has absolutely nothing to do with this amazingly designed scenery, and it really is beautiful. The other consideration is, and a lot of people have asked me about my rig and performance and all the rest of it, and you know, this is probably the toughest test of any airport scenery combination really there is, outside of maybe the densest part of Manhattan in prepared or FSX. And this is also the most demanding direction I found at the airport, which is pointing towards Oakland, more or less. But in the new installer for Northern California, Orbx has included a configurator that lets you remove a couple of items. It's cranes and some details from the area marinas that for some reason have always had an inordinate impact on frame rates. But just to give you some idea, let me just show you my P3D settings here in case you're curious. And we're running on 4K on a 32-inch screen with a 980 Ti and an overclocked 5820 processor, which is running at, I think, 4.4 gigahertz. I'm running with fiber time fraction set at 0.01 or 0.02, which is, as far as I can tell, just about the only tweak you need to make P3D not stutter, or at least not stutter so much. But here's what my settings look like, just so you can have an idea here. We've got, as you can see, 8 times multi-sampling anti-aliasing on. We've got FXAA off, which is just a sort of post-processing blurring, and we don't want that. We've got the highest level of anisotropic filtering on. And it's funny that I can say anisotropic, but I can't say fiber time fraction, but that's another story. Frames are locked at 60, VSync on, triple buffering is on, and in the scenery here you can see this is maxed, tessellation is maxed. What tessellation is basically throwing off as much texture processing and lighting as possible onto the video card instead of your CPU. Mesh resolution is at 5, texture is at 7 centimeters, very dense complexity, normal and normal. No special effects because I don't really want fireworks going off at every airport around. I do not have cloud reflections turned on, and as you can see in the lighting here, I've got low shadow quality, which is perfectly fine because shadows are blurry things anyway. And I do not have cloud shadows on. I only have object shadows so that we can see the airplane's shadow. And I've got shadows on for the inside and outside of the airplane. And I also have it set so that the airplane can cast shadows. Sometimes I can turn on cloud shadows and get not much of a hit. Other times, well, it's kind of hit or miss. Anyway, here's the flight we're going to be flying today in the new Dash. It is from here to Monterey, which normally would be a very, very quick jaunt, and we would normally fly out to somewhere around here and then get vectored towards the ILS here. But what I'm going to do is this time we're going to fly the full published procedure, which includes well, let me just go back to saying anisotropic instead, because it seems to be the only word I can say today. We will be doing the full procedure, which includes flying outbound on the ILS, doing a procedure turn, re-intercepting it, and then flying the ILS approach. I'm also going to be keeping our radios managed properly so that we have Big Sur backed up for our FMS, and we also have Salinas set up because that is our missed approach point, or at least a radio off of it is. So even though it is all programmed in GPS and INS and IRS in the FMS, we're going to have it set up so if we wanted to, we could actually do it with just radios, and maybe we'll when we get to here we'll do that. We'll pop us into heading mode, we will intercept the ILS outbound, and then we'll do our procedure turn manually. See how I feel. I might want to just do the whole thing on the FMS because, to tell you the truth, I want to see how well it sequences it and how well it tracks with everything. I don't think we'll fly the mist because I don't have that much time tonight to video this, but it's a nice quick flight. We'll be flying at flight level 150, and this is the approach we'll be flying in. As you can see, we'll come in from this direction. We will hit Pebs, which I suppose is Pebble Beach, because that is Pebble Beach right there. And we will fly to the localizer, intercept it, fly it outbound, then do this procedure turn where we fly outbound at 233 for, I believe it's 1 minute, maybe it's a minute and a half, and then we flip ourselves around this way and we re-intercept, and then in any case we will flip over from the FMS to nav1 and we will fly it in that way because I want to show you again the HUD. And what we'll have to do is we'll sort of have to scramble to configure everything, because if you notice right here, I've got tuned in on the radio, I've got tuned in the ILS for Monterey and the ILS in standby for Monterey, because when we go to the HUD, both sides will have to be tuned to the ILS. I've got Big Sur at the moment in my nav2, so I can have a needle pointing to it as we're flying towards it coming in. And this is Salinas in the standby for my nav1, so that if we go missed here, we will fly the heading we're supposed to fly, then we will punch this up and we will intercept the radial that we have to intercept to do the mist. So I've got everything kind of belt and suspenders. The other thing I'll do is in our ADF I'll punch in, no, actually I won't, because I don't have the needles left to display it. But what we will do is, because we'll have to, is you notice we've got a flight plan in FMS1. We do not have a flight plan in FMS2, and I'm going to show you the new feature of the Pro, and I believe the new release, or the release candidate for the pilot version of crossfill. So we go to Data and crossfill, and we will cross-fill the fuel, and now it shows a graphical display of it doing it. It's a minor thing, but now we go back to the flight plan and it is cross-filled. Kind of a dumb little thing, but it makes it all the more realistic. Alright, getting ready to go. Our bus tie is off, our heats are on. Our lights are set and correct. Our APU is off, ignitions are normal. Our bleeds are on and min. Our landing elevation should be reset to about that much, because the field is about 300 feet up. And our signs are set, our emergency lights are armed. Everything looks copacetic. Let's turn off our gust lock. Let's check our AFCS. 15,000 is our cruise. We're going to go straight up to it. Outcell, we're in heading select mode because we are going to, as you can see right here, we're on the Truckin' 2 departure. So we're going to fly runway heading till we get to 520 feet altitude, which will be about 2.8 seconds after our wheels leave the ground because we're reasonably light. Then make a gentle turn to tie-dye, then to Truckin', and then follow that on out. Takeoff trim is set. V-speeds are set. Flaps 10 are set. Nose wheel steering is on. Our demist is open so we don't get misty. Off can come the parking brakes. And we are not going to fly this with the HUD because we don't have an ILS tuned up, so it doesn't really give full guidance. But you know what? Let me try it, because here's what we're going to do. We've got our V-speeds here. We've got all the requisite gauges. And once our wheels leave the ground, an HSI will display. And so we'll be able to fly it, I think, using the meatballs as a flight director. So let's find out. Scooch the power up. This is an M-top takeoff. Looking for 80 knots first. There we are. There's V1 and rotate. And yep, look at that. Okay, so an HSI pops up. We're looking for 520. Gear can come up. And we're already going fast enough that we can start bringing up our flaps. 420, 520, and let's see if our flight direction works. I turned the wrong way, you noticed. So we're following the meatballs there on our flight path vector. Go into IAS mode because that's a good speed to climb at. That'll give us a nice vertical target. And we have to go into nav mode, which is why... Oh, it's the little things. Now let's see if we get correct guidance here. This is a sanity check. Now you see the pink flight director needle and you see the meatball are both displaced a little bit to the right. So I'm going to increase my rate of turn and I'm going to center them up. And sure enough, they correspond. Alright, let's see if we can keep this trend going. So we're in the turn right now from Truckin'. No, we're still a tie-dye, so we're going to be coming up on a right turn. Basically what I did was, with my shenanigans there, I got us off track. I'm getting a lot more... Okay, yeah, here we go. So we basically slopped all around the sky. We're going to turn back this way just in time to make a pretty brutal right turn to head. Yep, you see? Alright, so we'll make our right turn. But I don't know if you can tell from the way the plane is flying, but I'm starting to get used to the new higher precision controls, and they really let you just fly with a very nice light touch. couldn't be happier. Just increase our rate of turn a little bit and center our needles or our meatballs. Trim up a little bit so we get back to our target climbs speed. We can bring our props back. I'm almost hands-off on this right now. It trims nicely. It responds to the tiniest rudder inputs, which is what I'm feeding in right now. Just in lieu of doing rudder trim, I'm just doing a tiny little tap dance on the rudder pedals. There we are. And now we are headed to Big Sur. And because we are so relatively stable here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my hands off the controls, take care of some business here, and let's just see how much we move around when we come back to things. Look at that, not too bad. So this has turned into just a really steady, smooth, beautiful flying airplane here. And I didn't think it was possible to get much better, because it started off, it's always been just a wonderful plane to hand fly. But now, it's funny, I'm sitting here with the highest tech, looking through the highest tech device, the HUD, and I'm doing the most primitive, simple kind of flying imaginable, which is just hand flying the thing. And it could not be easier. Now I'm going to bring back our speed a little bit, climb a little bit faster, and to do that I'm going to invoke the tactile control system, the TCS, which will interrupt the autopilot and let me reconfigure the climb ever so slightly, so we slow down and we climb more steeply. And what you'll see is, you'll see this blank out, and when I let go of it, it will give me a new IAS. So I'm looking at my airspeed indicator, and you notice the little notched index right on the right side of that scale is creeping down with it. And let's make it 175 and we'll let go. There. Now it's 175, and you notice the IAS designation at the top there has enunciated, and now we're coming up on top of climb. I'm just going to pop in the autopilot for a moment, let it settle us and bring back our props to 850, and we'll just pop down here, see that we've captured, and we have. Square up our heading bug. There we are. And 114 is Big Sur, so not receiving it yet. Not sure if it's a short distance VOR. It might very well be. No icing yet. And again, this is Orbx's NorCal, and that down there is San Jose. And it looks pretty darn good. And there, a little bit of moisture, a little ice detected. Let's see what it looks like. Nope, don't see anything there. Ordinarily, I'm told that icing detection is so hit or miss in almost every airplane that really the way you check for icing, the only reliable way to check for icing is to look on this little spigot, and look at that. That's how well modeled this airplane is. I'm just going to marvel at this for a minute. If you look right there, that's ice. And that's on the little windshield wiper grommet. So we'll turn on our boots, and that is the only reliable way to tell whether you're icing or not. It's pretty cool. Alright, so now Big Sur is showing up as a green needle, and we are pointing at it, and that's good. Let me just retrim our rudder a little bit here. And let's start getting ready for the approach. First of all, we'll program in a descent into our VNAV, and actually what I should have done is checked where our first constraint is. 4,000 at Munso, so pop into VNAV, choose Munso, which is number 6. It says 4,000, that's where we want to be. And it's interesting, it shows that the next Munso will be at 2,100 because we're going to be spinning around in a procedure turn, and we should be expected to lose that altitude in that procedure turn. I'm going to program in this profile, and I'm going to leave this as is, just out of idle curiosity, because I wonder whether it's smart enough to continue to give us VNAV guidance through this procedure turn. So I'm just going to see if that actually works, and I'll be very impressed if it does. I haven't read the Universal UNS-1 real-life manual well enough to know whether it will or not. So basically we're being our own test pilots here. We're just going to discover it. And I'm just going to adjust this so that it'll give us about a 3-degree glide path, pretending we can kind of do a continuous descent approach through this whole procedure right onto the glide slope. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, I don't know. I find some of these new approaches really fascinating. You can now build an approach. Usually airlines do it when they have a particular route that has some special demands. You can build a GPS RNP approach and then submit it to the FAA, get it approved, and then fly it instead of the standard approach. So JetBlue just unveiled its company approach that it flies for the Canarsie approach into JFK. And what it allows it to do is, instead of having a bunch of step downs and things like that, it flies the thing in one continuous descent and curve from the beginning to end with very, very good precision and with flight director guidance. So it in essence it imposes a much more high precision approach than there are nav aids for. It's better than just a LNAV VNAV overlay. It's officially sanctioned, and it's precise down to, in some cases, a tenth of a mile laterally, and it also, the best of them have vertical guidance, and they're really useful when you fly into places like Alaska or Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or other airports that are surrounded by mountain terrain or in bowls or have funny curves to them, or that you simply want to do as one continuous curving, swooping thing for a variety of reasons, including noise abatement or fuel savings. And you can basically build these things. I believe there actually are companies that do this for the airlines that offer the service, and then get them approved, and then instead of having to accept the regular approach, which might take longer or might burn more fuel or do any number of things, you can basically say, I want this approach, and they'll say okay, and then you'll swoop on in from the heavens. Anyway, here's the airport. There is Big Sur up that way. This is Pebble Beach over here. So we're basically going to fly out to there, start to descend, and then fly out this way, do a procedure turn, flip around, and come back in. And let me just make sure I'm fully configured for my VNAV. Yes, top of descent is in 53 miles. That's good. Now once we start descending, I'm going to reconfigure ourselves for a HUD ILS landing, and to do that I need some information. The approach course is going to be 098, 110.7. Touchdown zone elevation and runway length are crucial, so 193.6576. So we put in 6576 for the runway length, and then 193 for the elevation. Hit runway again. 193. Enter. It is a standard 3-degree glide slope. Yes, it is. And as soon as we get to Big Sur, we'll do our radio change. But in the meantime, let me just see. All right. On this side, actually I still want it to be drawing from nav 2, so we're not going to be able to configure this for our HUD until we do the flip, but we will be able to configure the left-hand side. And the way we do that is we pop up format, wait till it changes, we confirm that it is 110.7, and we confirm that it is 098, and it is. And you can see we're 9 miles over it, but we're going to fly past it. So I'll hit format again to go back to our flight plan. And as you can see, here's our convoluted setup here. Just zoom out a little bit. See Big Sur and then top of descent over there. While I'm thinking about it, let's see if we can arm the approach. So you go into nav mode, and yes, we can. I don't want to activate it yet, and it doesn't offer me tune approach because it's already tuned. And if you look out over here, that is Salinas, and that is our alternate in case there's a marine layer obscuring Monterey, but there shouldn't be. And while I'm thinking about that, let's check the weather in Monterey. Ordinarily I do this on ATIS, but it's so loud and unnecessary. Okay, clear, no winds, 2992. A perfectly standard day. So we'll set local altimeter because we are there. And there we are. And until we hit Big Sur, we're pretty much fat and happy. Let me just give you a look at the scenery here. It is really quite something. Okay, that is Highway 1 down there. There's the field. This is the remnants of an old runway back when it was a naval base. And back when no self-respecting airport had less than 2 runways. And if we look straight down here, if I can find it, there. That's the Laguna Seca race course. And that is modeled. And this is Highway 101 heading back to San Francisco. And back here, the fabulous Pebble Beach golf links. And also Spyglass Hill. I forget which one is which. I believe this is Pebble Beach right there. And this is Carmel. And these are probably the Sierra something or other mountains, but I don't remember offhand. And this is the Central Valley, where your tomatoes come from. Alright, in advance of our descent, well, we've kept the fasten seatbelt signs on. Let's just check to see whether we need the ice protection anymore. And to actually do that, I'm going to go right up there and look at this. Our little probe, the ice is gone. So this is incredibly well modeled, and that is really, really cool. Now, as for whether these engine intake doors are open or closed, different airlines have different SOPs. Some say they should be open all the time, others have them closed when the ice protection is off and only open when it's on. And so I do not know what the SOP is for this particular airline, but I know that it's not going to hurt anything either way. Now, because we're going to be descending and also making a very sharp turn here and eating up a little bit of real estate to do it, I'm going to slow us down. Also, we're starting to show VNAV is enunciating, so I'll put it in VNAV mode and I'll spin our altitude down to our target, which is 4,000. There we are. I've got this set up as a little small pop-up gauge here so that when I use the HUD, I can glance to the right and still see what my torque settings are. I know it's a little bit of a cheat, but I don't have the same view I'd have in the real world where I could just look from the HUD and glance down there. So we'll slow a little bit more. Make sure we're in VNAV mode. And when we make the turn, we will flip our nav 2 to 110.7. While we're at it, we'll get our V speeds. 126, and our V approach will be 131. We'll make it. There we are. That's another requirement for the HUD. Our decision height is 200. I'll just turn that MDA off. And here comes our turn. So now at this point I will, while keeping an eye on the airspeed, slow down to about 210. And I will pop up our arc due. I will flip this to correspond. very quickly pop over to the first officer's side, and I will set the course for it to 098. Alright, so that should fulfill the requirements there. And we'll be getting close to our top of descent momentarily. It looks like we lost our VNAV path. So let's see if we regain it in time. That's still our top of descent, but it's no longer enunciating VNAV, so we may have to reacquire that. And if not, we'll just descend manually. Recall we set it so it's going to descend at about 1,725 feet per minute, so I can always go down in VS mode and do it manually or semi-automatically. But yep, see, it reacquires. Okay, but now we have to put it back into VNAV mode. See, there's all these little gotchas, and there's all these little ways that it can, without alerting or alarming you, put you in a bad position. So we're re-intercepting our FMS flight path, and we're at a very nice speed. Just going to recheck our approach plates. So 098 is our inbound. So our outbound is the reciprocal of that. So I'm going to actually bug that up. So because we're going to be turning outbound next. So that's 018. No, that's not 018. Zero 98, so that's 098 plus 180 is 278. God, boy. Tell you, I can say anisotropic, but I can't do arithmetic. So we'll go to 278 for our outbound, because that's where we're going to turn when we get to our ILS and intercepted outbound. And we're coming up on top of descent. We're going at just about the right speed. And you know what? I think what we'll do is we'll fly this whole thing on the FMS until we get established on the ILS, because I really want to see how well it sequences the whole thing. So we'll fly it basically on FMS until we get to the intermediate fix, which is Munso the second time around. So here we go. And if you're interested in what it looks like on the HUD, let's just get rid of these two. There we are. We're deviated off to one side because there's a 17 knot crosswind pushing us that way. This is our HSI, although it's kind of tiny. It's kind of hard to see. And here comes our VNAV. So at this point, ordinarily in a descent I would let it creep up to the barber pole speed, but because we're going to be very quickly maneuvering after that, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce pretty much to flight idle. So there's my little cheat, because I don't want to push it down too far and incur the dreaded beta range whistle, which usually accompanies a panicked chopping of the power when you've botched your arrival, as I have many times. But as you can see, this is our rate of descent. This still says we're on FMS 1. And we are in VNAV path mode, and this is our initial constraint. And I've left outcell off because I want to just basically have its own way and see how well it tracks everything else. Now, since things are going to get busy, we'll turn on our pumps and we'll put our bleeds to min. Our lights are on. Our passenger signs are signed. Our cabin pressure is coming down. Our HUD is set. We are on profile. Our altimeter has been set. V-speeds are set. This is our outbound heading on the ILS, and I believe we're turning right now to PEBS. I'm sorry, to MR. Alright, now theoretically what's going to happen is, that's our outbound heading, is it will turn us here, and then it will turn us here and spin us around. And if we're lucky, it will also descend us from 4,000 to 2,000 along the way. And I'm just going to let it do its thing at this point. One thing I've noticed about the Pro version is they did some tweaks, I think, to the flight model, because now it seems like there's more propeller-induced drag when you're descending. I'm in 850 for the props, and at just about flight idle, and it is giving us sufficient drag now that our speed isn't zooming way up. Not that it did before, but it's really, it feels about right. So I'm going to configure us for a reduced noise profile landing. You do that by pushing that button and then moving the props up. It will only do that if you are below 50% torque and you're already at 850. And we're going to be doing a flaps 15 landing. So let us see if it turns us outbound. If it doesn't, I'll jump into heading select mode and we'll do it manually. Let's play everybody's favorite game now. What's it doing now? It should be turning us left, and it is not. So let us step in, do it ourselves. I'm guessing I misprogrammed something, but let's just see. That is wild. Alright, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch our nav source so I can see where the localizer is. the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put 4,000 outcell, plug in a vertical speed of, let's just say 1700. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into heading select, and now the autopilot's off at the moment. I'm just flying this. We will intercept the localizer outbound, and we'll just fly the procedure this way. So I'm just nosing us down now, come off the power a little bit, and we'll fly the full approach by hand. And then we'll pop up the HUD and see whether it will offer us HUD guidance. Alright, so that is our intermediate fix right there on the map. I'm going to fly us outbound here. And there is our localizer on the HSI there on the right. You see that? We're going to be coming in from the back side, and we will turn to intercept it going outbound. We'll turn to 278. That is wild and wacky stuff. I'm almost certain I plugged in something wrong in the FMS, but maybe not. So now we're just looking for the CDI to come in, and I'm just going to increase our rate of descent a little bit here. Pull the power back. Retrim a little bit so I can be a little bit hands off. There we are. And as soon as that thing starts to move, we will intercept. Here it is. Put ourselves in a standard rate right turn as we descend. 1,000 away. Start to pull ourselves up. And there we are. Now, I'm going to turn on the autopilot here. And it has captured our altitude. Now I'm going to spin the heading bug around to 233. And we're going to fly this outbound for 2 minutes. Put us in vertical speed mode. Spin our altitude down to 2100. Start a clock. Watching our speed come down, just keep it around 180. And we'll spin our vertical speed down to about there. Watching our clock, 30 seconds have gone by. And we're going to come back to the reciprocal, which is 053, and I'm cheating because, again, I can't do arithmetic in my head worth a damn. Outcell. Make our altitude 2100. There we are. And we'll start our turn. 2053, and that will re-intercept.
Caution, terrain. Caution, terrain.
There ain't no terrain here. Just the ocean. Alright, so around we go to 053. As we've captured our altitude again, and our speed will creep down. And what we're going to do is, you see where this is set up? It's set up to re-intercept. But I think, well, we might make it, we might miss it, I'm not sure. If not, we'll have to re-intercept from the other side. You know what? We might just make it. We're coming around the turn. I mean, after all, that's what a procedure turn is supposed to do. Get our gear down. Bring our power up. Put us in nav mode. That will establish us. Turn our heading to 098. Try our gear again. There we are. And we'll wait for the glide slope to come to us. Now, this is yellow, which means I'm misconfigured. So let's just check our arc do. They're both there. I bet you I'm drawing from the wrong one here. Nav source left should be. Be nice if I could see it. VOR1, VOR2, that's all correct. Ah, nav source here. I'm set up on nav 2. Let me quickly go into heading select mode, change my nav source to nav 1, go back into nav mode, and now, as you can see, it is blue. Now, as you can also see, when we put up the HUD, it should shortly pop us into an approach mode. If it hasn't yet, let me just see why not. Got the localizer on both sides. Let's remember also that when we go mist, if we go mist, we're going to flip this and we're going to fly towards that, 3,000 feet. And in a second I'm going to drop in the rest of our flaps. But I really want to keep my eye on this. Let's just see what this thing does. Alright, this seems to have all the necessary guidance. That's our airspeed. Our gear is down, flaps not yet 5, but heading for 15. Our pumps and lights are all cool. This little gidget means that we're above our speed target for VAP, which is fine because we don't want to be at our VAP yet. And also because we're flying at 161 but we only have one notch of flaps up and our gear out at the moment, we are flying at about 2.5 degrees nose up. So we can fix that by putting in a little bit of flap. There we go. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over into approach mode as soon as I start to see one dot of glide slope. So let me just wait to throw in the HUD for the moment, because I'd really rather monitor this. And let's just trim a little bit. Keep the speed from creeping up too much. We are now fully configured for landing. Alright, so here comes the glide slope. And we're on the approach. We can arm the approach. We can pop up the HUD. We can look. And it is now, the approach mode is now all armed. So okay, that all works. And let's slow down to our final approach speed. And in a second I'll pop out the autopilot and we'll just fly the approach. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay. Coming down, coming down, coming down. And here comes the glide slope. There we go, starting to go downhill. Alright. In comes my feet. Off comes the autopilot. Bring up the power a little bit. And let's see how well this lines up. I think I mentioned in the last video it doesn't always line up perfectly because add-on airports are a little bit misaligned sometimes with respect to the stock nav aids. And I think this might be a little bit misaligned too, but let's give it a try. So we'll fly the flight director and the meatballs there. Now it's telling us to fly left. I see the runway lights there sort of underneath our HUD. And so I'm not sure whether that's entirely right.
1,000.
And if it's not, it's a shame because I'd love to be precise enough on this thing at an airport like this, which gets a lot of fog and marine stuff, to be able to fly this all the way down to minimums. I'm keeping it about a dot high because there's hilly terrain in front of the runway. And I don't like the notion of being low at this airport. You'll notice I'm also a few knots fast. Actually, it looks to be tracking pretty well. Alright, there we are. I popped in it to standby mode, which is why it has that warning there.
Plus 100.
And the runway guidance looks good.
Minimums. 100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
Oh, not bad. And there you have it. A little bit of a fumble in the FMS, and I don't know whether that's a function of the database or my programming of it. I checked the route pretty carefully, but I've been known to make mistakes, and this is Orbx's Monterey, and sadly there isn't yet a prepared version 3 installer for it, but most of it works. There's one DLL, the object flow DLL, does not work, and in case you try and do this yourself, and I know Orbx doesn't recommend it, but in case you do install it using that tool from that guy in that place on the Baltics, what you'll have to do is you'll have to go into the DLL XML file, and you'll have to disable that particular object flow DLL, or it will pop up an error message when you start the program. Nothing else will break, but you know, it kind of makes it inconvenient. So that was kind of a cool flight, all things considered, and I guess the lesson is check everything, double check it, and if the autopilot or the FMS is making the plane do something you don't want it to do, don't waste too much time wondering what's it doing now and getting stuck troubleshooting it. Just have a backup, and if you can, fly the plane as simply and as cleanly and as properly as you possibly can. Put yourself in a known good state and get yourself back into a position where you can use your plan B, and always have a plan B and a plan C in case your plan B fails. And with that, here in beautiful Monterey Peninsula, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.